Welcome in. Let's have a story. My throat is still a little bit rough from COVID, which I recovered from over the past couple of weeks. But I've been putting off this stream for long enough, so I'm just going ahead. We'll see how long my throat holds up. This is a long-delayed birthday stream where I am going to be reading some of my own writing instead of the classic literature I usually read and poems. I'm going to be reading the Papa Bear Chronicles, Book 1. I have started writing Papa Bear lore, I guess you could say. So, give me a moment to gurgle some hot water, and then I'll get started. Okay, the story we're reading tonight is called The Bear Guide. Tonight, Cubs, I'm going to tell you a story from my own past, long ago. It's one story among many from my travels through the many realms of the Infinite Library, but this is the story of how I became known as Papa Bear. This is the story of how I lost myself, found a child all alone in the most inhospitable wilderness, and finally found my way home again. In the process, I rediscovered my wandering self, my love, and my wonder. Get comfy, because our story begins in a truly awful place. Chapter 1, The Endless Plain. The low, scrubby grass was rough and brittle beneath my paws as I trudged across a vast, featureless plain. Under an expansive sky of perpetual twilight, blown by a constant, stale-smelling breeze, it whispered its complaints, decrying my steps as intruders in this place, a place hostile to vibrancy, change, novelty. My way into this place had been a one-way passage between worlds, and I was, I suppose, searching for another passageway out. I'd visited many worlds of the Infinite Library through such connections, exploring its realms for what must have been many lifetimes already, though the flow of time isn't always straightforward. Here, in this place, time could hardly be said to flow at all. There was no sun nor moon to mark the passage of time. Just a hazy sky lit in all directions by dim, pallid light. I couldn't be sure for how long I'd been there, and I had no idea how to get out. The plain went on unchanged, no matter how far I walked. There was nothing to eat or drink other than the dry grass, but I had neither thirst nor hunger. I was perfectly comfortable in my misery. Comfortable physically, you understand. I've suffered realms that would give nightmares. Yes, there was one realm where... Oh, but that's a story for another day. I have memories of realms that, though dangerous and terrible, still were flush with vibrant color and unfathomable wonder. Ample nourishment for my mind, but this endless, monotonous expanse, it was a nightmare of a different order. One of inescapable, unrelenting sameness. The despair started as a small voice whispering its doubts in my ear. What purpose does this wandering serve? You will never find meaning here. You do not matter. How long had this voice been there? Perhaps it was there even before I came to the plane. Maybe I was always a little lost in my wanderings through the realms of the library. Yes, that was the voice that grew inside me, a dread that this was not only my existence now and forever forward, but that this might have been my entire existence. All before and all after, without purpose, meaning, or direction. It was then, this voice filling my mind, that I realized my honeypot was gone. It had been my steady companion through all of my travels, and now it was not in my satchel. Panic tightened in my chest as I tried to remember when I had last seen it, when I had set it down. I knew I'd had the pot. It was as much a part of me as my paws, but I could not remember when I'd last held it. My mouth suddenly dry, I looked around frantically, hoping to spot the familiar shape of the pot against the bland horizon, or catch a whiff of its sweet, earthy fragrance. There was nothing but the endless, dull terrain. I stopped, defeated, and turned trembling back in the aimless direction I'd been walking. Hello, Chickie. Welcome in. Let me give you a shout out. Not that I have many viewers at the moment. I'm glad you could make it. I'm reading the Papa Bear Chronicles, Book 1. And if you want to find out what happened to the honeypot, you're going to have to stick around to the end. I might not finish the story tonight. It's a long one. Where was I? I stopped, defeated, and turned trembling back in the aimless direction I'd been walking. That's when I saw her. She was just standing there, a human child, maybe 10 years old, wearing a simple sage green tunic with long sleeves, patched in places but clean, with sturdy hiking boots and a small satchel slung across her body. She was so out of place, so impossible. There was nowhere in this landscape to hide or appear from. I had seen her before I smelled her, and keep in mind, I have a bear's nose, so this was unnerving. Yet, there she was. Immobilized by confusion, I stared at her dumbly while the rusty gears of my mind lethargically groaned into motion. Hello, Dragon Shadow. Welcome in. How did she get here? Why was she here? She looked as lost as I felt, her eyes wide as they met mine, mouth slightly agape. There was a vulnerability about her that tugged at something within me. dragging dusty emotions from their attic storage. Protectiveness, concern, sympathy, and the apprehension of watching a fragile object falling from a high place. And something else, too, a spark that rekindled memories of my old friend's wonder and curiosity. The unexpected reunion with these feelings, once so inseparable from myself, caught me off guard in this desolate place. But above all, here was a mystery, a new feature in this featureless place. It was an unsettling development, but the change, any change, was welcome. And so I fixed my gaze on this novelty, this child who seemed as misplaced as a star in daylight. She returned my stare with eyes which held no fear, only a quiet bewilderment that echoed my own. "Hello," I ventured, my voice sounding strange, hoarse, and small in the silent expanse. I had not used or heard my voice in how long? The sound of it was unfamiliar to my ears. "Are you lost?" I said. She blinked and stared for an awkward moment. "Are you?" she began, hesitating. I waited for her to continue. "A talking bear?" I chuckled gently. The sound of my own laughter recalled a memory of another place where plants growing along the swampy shores of rainbow-hued streams would gurgle up fountains of effervescent water as your steps disturbed the spongy ground around them, each time creating an uncannily accurate sound of laughter. But the dullness of this place immediately dampened the sound of my chuckle and buried the memory of the giggling plants in the stale dirt, restoring bland sameness. I shook off a shudder and forced myself to return to the child's question. I could have taken offense at her incredulity about my intelligence, of course, but that would be unfair. As you see, I'm not entirely a bear, not of the sort this girl meant, though, nor am I human. I walk upright unless I want to move fast, and my hands can hold and grasp like human hands. And yes, I speak many languages, in fact. This child, though, needed only a simple answer. "I am, indeed," I responded, as eloquently as a talking bear could muster. After a moment's pause, she seemed satisfied by this answer, as if uncertain about how strange she should find this. I was struck again by how fragile her small form looked in this immense space, and I looked around, scanning for clues to explain her appearance. There was no sign of where she might have come from, no footprints in the dirt, no path leading to or from her. I sniffed the air and smelled no other humans that she might belong to. Turning back to the child, I realized that I couldn't leave her alone in this place, and I didn't want to. "Where did you come from? How did you get here?" She hesitated, brow furrowed. I don't know," she said, finally. "Hello, Sire Tyler. Welcome in. Welcome to the Grizzly Bears. I hope you enjoy your stay here." I would suggest, if you want your voice to be like this, you should make sure to get as many respiratory infections as you can through the course of your life. That might help. I'm just recovering from COVID myself, so my voice is usually a little bit less hoarse than this. And hello, Cookie, welcome in. Welcome back. Glad to see you here. We are reading The Bear Guide, which is book 1 of the Papa Bear Chronicles. We are on chapter 1, which is called The Endless Plain. We have just met this young girl alone in the middle of this infinite, unending, endless plain. And we are very confused about how she got there. This is the mystery we will be solving. Where was I? What's your name? I asked, taking a cautious step closer. She paused again before answering, her voice a mere whisper. I don't know. Oops, sorry. All right, I said, trying to muster calmness. It's all right, we'll figure it out. I wondered how we would figure it out. The infinite library was full of mysteries, and this was not the first I'd stumbled upon, but this one was particularly disquieting. A child, alone, with no memory of herself or how she got here. I looked around for any signs that she had arrived through a portal and saw none. If she had, it was, like my entry to this world, a one-way passage. And portals did not steal memories, as far as I had experienced. My eyes settled on her little satchel. If you don't mind me asking, what have you got in your satchel there? She looked down suddenly as if surprised and perhaps a little excited to see a satchel there. She grabbed it and opened it quickly, peering in. She turned it to different angles and reached in and felt around, disappointment creeping across her expression. Finally, she turned it upside down and shook it, showing me it was entirely empty. A dead end in this open plain. A lost child with an empty satchel and no memory appearing without a trace. A lost bear without a purpose. A vast, unchanging, undifferentiated landscape. The rusty gears of a bear's disused brain slowly accelerating their meshing teeth. We need to find a way out of here, I said, more to myself than to her. The endless plain offered no clues, no direction to follow. I felt a pang of longing for my lost honeypot and its reassuring aroma. It was then that I first felt it, a tingle racing up my spine, sending shivering waves through my fur. I glanced around warily, scanning for anything unusual on the horizon, sniffing for a new scent on the air. I wasn't sure what I expected, just something, but there was nothing, only the girl and the endless plain. I didn't know why I was suddenly tense, but I was. We should move, I said, my voice edged with a newfound urgency that I couldn't explain, and no reason to believe that moving would lead to change. Stay close. We began to walk. I slowed my long strides so that she, with small, brisk steps, could keep pace. If my nervousness concerned her, she didn't let it show. The moon ahead of us glowed in its ghostly light, a beacon in the empty expanse. I didn't know where it was leading us, but it was at least a direction. Wait a second, I thought, suddenly off balance, stumbling to a stop. Where did that moon come from? The girl stopped a few paces ahead of me and looked back, inquisitively, her eyes pale, placid, probing. I tried to remember anything I could about the moon. As I thought back, I remembered distinctly the blandness of the sky in this place, always bathed in dim, uniform light, but never a feature in the sky, no sun and no moon. I remembered that distinctly for the way it obscured the passage of time. When had I seen the moon before? Had I seen it before this child appeared? I could not remember seeing it before, but neither could I remember it being new. I looked back up at the phantom moon hanging low above the horizon. I looked at the child beside it and was struck once again by her smallness and vulnerability. I thought about how she might be frightened by my sudden pause, my uncertainty. And all the while, the feeling of that unseen pursuer lingered, an unexplainable chill rippling through my fur, a threatening emptiness. I wondered, not for the first time in my life, if I might be going crazy. I started moving again, keeping the moon in my sights. The girl remained quiet, shoulders forward and arms drawn tight across her torso. Her gaze, like mine, was fixed on the moon, brow still furrowed in contemplation, as if she were trying to remember something important. I wanted to ask her more, to understand who she was and why she was here, but my voice still felt strange, unfamiliar, and the words never came. I kept glancing over my shoulder, sniffing the air, but there was never anything there, just the empty horizon. Was something pursuing the child? She did not seem to mirror my fears. True, my senses were better than hers, but as I could not identify any reason for fear in my bodily senses, that seemed an unlikely explanation. Sorry, I'm going to have to stop and gargle water frequently tonight, I think. Thinking again of the girl, I resisted the urge to keep looking back. There was never anything there after all, and moved on. The child remained silent, subdued, and distant, though I thought perhaps her brow was less furrowed, and a hint of wonder had crept into her eyes. What she must be feeling, I could not imagine. To find yourself in this place, guided only by a talking bear who is as lost and frightened as yourself. She paused, her gaze fixed on something in the distance. I followed her line of sight and saw only the moon. I sniffed the air, anxious about standing still. Then I saw it too. At first I thought it was the moon shimmering, but no, it was closer. It was the air itself, undulating like curtains in a gentle breeze. I had seen this before many times. This was a place where two worlds touch, a place where we could leave this world and enter another. These curtains veiled a window to another reality, a veil that could be easily brushed aside. I did not care what other world we would find there. I longed for an end to this unending place, and an escape from whatever was following the child. I took her hand and pulled her forward with reckless determination. As we approached the threshold, a familiar sensation returned to me. I had not felt it in so long. It was like a rediscovered childhood toy. That buzzing energy of change, of thrilling transition, of discovery and adventure, of breathless anticipation growing stronger with every step. The child must have felt it too. She was brave to hurtle towards this unknown with me unquestioningly. Not that I was giving her much choice with my iron grip on her hand. Perhaps, though, there was more to this little human. As I took my final step in the endless plain, I glared at the moon through waving ribbons of hair. What are you, Moon? Who is this child? What is pursuing her? Do you know? And just like that, the endless plain came to an end. For us, at least. That was Chapter 1, entitled The Endless Plain. I'll take a brief break for some water before I begin. Chapter 2, The Misty Woods. Chapter 2, The Misty Woods. My paw landed on the spongy floor of a dense forest. A thick mist, sticky with earthy scents of damp moss and crawling, oozing life, displaced the sterile air of the plain into my snout. I was still clutching the child's hand. We paused, catching our breath after the exhilaration of hurtling through the connection between these worlds. Immediately I thought of my honeypot. It was somewhere back in that world. I hadn't even considered it as I raced forward, and I would never see it again. We looked around. Above us, the tops of thick-trunked trees were shrouded in fog, their branches closing over us. Moonlight barely penetrated the canopy, casting a diffuse glow over this new realm. It was so different from the open plain I'd just left, but somehow this place still made me feel small. As I took all this in, I noticed with relief that the feeling of being watched or followed was gone. Perhaps, I hoped, by stepping into this new realm we had shaken off our invisible shadow. Between this and the change of scenery after the unchanging sameness of the plains, I felt lightened from a burden I'd grown so used to. But it had just seemed a part of myself. I looked down at my new companion. Her eyes were alive and crackling with astonishment and wonder. But of course they were. Stepping between worlds must have been extraordinary to her and more than a little frightening. I was no longer gripping her hand, but she gripped mine tightly. Her eyes darted around as she slowly swiveled her head, drinking in this surreal transition, a mix of exhilaration and trepidation trembling across her face. Looking at her, I felt my own wonder about the limitless possibilities of the infinite library. Jaded in my ageless wanderings of it, rekindled. In her childlike curiosity, I could feel once again a glimmer of my former self. "Are you okay?" I asked her, my voice soft in the quiet of the woods. It was less strange sounding to me now. She nodded, her gaze still wandering over the scene. "It's different here," she said, her voice tremulous. It was a rather understated observation, I thought. I wasn't tired, but I felt like we should take a moment to get off our feet anyway. There was a large fallen branch up ahead, a good size for sitting on. I stepped toward it, the child still clutching my hand, the damp soil yielding pleasantly under our steps, making soft plodding sounds as we walked. I sat, and she sat next to me, finally letting go of my hand. "So, what shall we call you?" I asked, mindful of how scary it must be to not remember your name. After a moment, She looked up at me next to her, eyes shining with playful defiance. I don't know. What shall we call you? I laughed heartily, and she giggled along with me, our voices sparkling gaily through the dark of the forest before falling muted in the heavy mist. We were both, I think, grateful for the excuse to laugh, however modest the joke after the tension of the plain. But then I had to reflect on her question. I'd had a name once, long before in another life, and I no longer felt like the name fit me well. It would hold for her even less meaning than it held now for me, and anyway, having a name hardly felt fair when she could not remember hers. What would you like to call me? I responded. She stared at me a moment with searching eyes, then looked away. You look like Papa Bear. I'll call you Papa Bear. I was utterly disarmed. It was strikingly earnest, flattering, and terrifying. I looked down at this small child, this mystery who had appeared so suddenly in my life. Who was I to this creature? How could I be that? How could I help her when just moments before I met her, I was myself wandering directionless, without a plan or even a goal? I supposed that for the moment anyway, I did have a goal, this child. But I still had no plan. She was shifting slightly next to me. I realized I'd been silent for a while and had given her no response. I didn't honestly know what to say. Thankfully, she took the lead. Back in that other place, you looked nervous, like you were running from something. What did you think was there? Her question again caught me off guard. I thought I might have noticed something there, I offered. I didn't want to frighten her. I thought, actually, it might be something following you. Do you have any idea what that might be? There was no point, I supposed, in hiding this from her if she might be in real danger. She shook her head. No, what did you notice? Did you see something? No, not exactly, I hesitated. What had I seen? Nothing, nor heard, nor smelled, but I definitely felt something dreadful, something chasing us, or chasing her, or maybe chasing me. I thought I saw the woods darken a shade. Its fog wafted through my mind, making my thoughts heavy and effortful. Were the trees listening? Were their branches closing in on us? The clearing seemed to constrict, suddenly smaller, tighter. I glanced up, nervously scanning to see if there was still a path out. I had to figure out how to help this child. Is there anything you remember about yourself that might help us get you home safely? The girl looked at me for a while, a challenge in her eyes, as if reflecting my question back at me. What an enigma, this child. Eventually, she just shook her head again and shifted her attention back to the foggy woods. I felt, somehow, she was disappointed in me. I guess I offered that we both need to find our way home, don't we? At that, she brightened, briskly hopping off the log and skipping away toward the other edge of the clearing. Come on then, let's go. Wait, I cried, dismayed by her recklessness, but off she was, out of the clearing into the hazy mist. I bounded after her and caught up. With more effort, than expected given that I was a bear and she a child. The viscous fog seemed to slow my body as well as my mind. Leaving the clearing behind, the trees closed in around us, and the musty damp filled my snout. I caught a flash of color through the dark ahead as some kind of bird with iridescent feathers was startled off its perch by our approach. "Is it gone?" she called back to me as I reached her, not stopping. "Is what gone?" I huffed back, annoyed that she was ignoring my request for caution. "Whatever you were afraid of." It was not gone, I wanted to say. It felt closer than ever as she ventured into the dark woods. No evident path before us. I had to find a path. I had to help this girl find home. I had to know more about her. "Have you ever seen a place like this?" I asked, gesturing to the woods around us, grasping for some clue to guide us as she picked her way through some brambles, crowned by bioluminescent, mushroom-like flowers blooming in the shade. She shook her head. "I don't think so." How strange and scary it must be to find yourself with no memories, no anchor to your past. And here she was, trusting a creature like me in a place that defied understanding. Her boots squished through a particularly swampy dip in the terrain. I listened for signs of our pursuer, but the forest was crowded with unfamiliar sounds and smells, chittering, skittering creatures, dripping condensation, a distant brook, the slow creaking of the massive trees gossiping, perhaps discussing us. Were they on our side, or spies for our pursuer? The one I began to feel had followed us through that portal after all. "Do you wonder about me?" I asked, hoping to displace my anxiety with conversation. "About what kind of bear I am, or why I'm here?" Immediately I felt foolish for asking such a question. "Hello, Sharky Misty. Welcome in. Welcome to the Grizzly Bears. I hope you enjoy your stay here." I don't have yet that cool AI shout-out tool that you have, but I can give you the boring old shout-out. Sharky Misty also streams ASMR for anyone who's interested in more traditional ASMR with more traditional triggers. Welcome in, Sharky. We are reading some of my own writing. We're reading the Papa Bear Chronicles, Book 1, called The Bear Guide. She paused and looked back at me, a thoughtful expression on her face. "I do," she admitted, turning back and continuing on, gently touching the mossy trunks as she passed. "You're not like any bear I can imagine. You talk, you think, you care. It's strange, but there you are." Was it as simple as that to her? There I was, Papa Bear. But where was I, precisely? We were traveling upward now, ascending out of the veiling mists. Here the light began to wrestle free from the fog, and the forest was alight with more glowing flora and small, flickering, iridescent animals. Mercurial flashes of life, fluorescing in the moonlight as it filtered through the canopy above. The air here, infused with the pungency of wild herbs and the subtle sweetness of ripening berries, was notably crisper, carrying the gossiping whispers of the trees further into the sky. Thank you, Sharky, for the kind words. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I raised my eyes, following their rumors. Through the tangle of gnarled branches I could now glimpse a moon, still hazy even in the wispier mist, planted in the sky. Was it the same moon from the plain? It was, somewhat higher in the sky, as ghostly as the other moon, painting the scene the same desaturated tones. But here, the landscape of crawling, growing things answered it, in reflected rainbow, setting the misty air aglow, the vibrant tableau struggling back against the dampening fog. I felt I'd like to explore this place, and my fear faded somewhat. I looked at the girl, and she too appeared to be enthralled by the woods, her bright eyes reflecting glints of its colors. She had bent down to examine some fleshy, bulbous plant, or was it an animal, glowing and pulsing slowly in the undergrowth. She was unafraid to explore this wondrous place. But at that thought, I felt disconcerted that whatever might still be there, this was not likely her home nor mine, and I didn't hope that it hid any answers for us in its midst. I didn't know where the answers were, but I wanted to keep moving. I looked back up to the sky. There you are, moon, I thought. Will you answer my questions yet? Hey, look. The girl was pointing at what looked like a worn path. I sniffed the air ahead, then nodded. I suppose we could see where that goes. She was already gone down the path. I turned and peered back into the fog behind us, sniffing apprehensively, before following after her. I'm glad you're still hanging around here, Chickie. Let me also, unless it's too soon, give you another shout-out. Chickie also does very comfy ASMR. Oh, I have to wait 25 minutes and 17 seconds before giving you a shout-out. I'm very sorry. My throat is still recovering from COVID, and I need to take a short break to gargle some hot water. Alrighty. Oh, hello, Sire. You're still here. By the way, Sire, I have 98 followers at the moment. I have a follower goal of 100. If you would care to follow, it's quite simple. Where was I? The path soon widened, cutting a corridor overhead that framed the moon between rows of stately trees. I could see now that they were even taller than I'd guessed, reaching up to meet the moon. The girl flitted back and forth across the path with boundless curiosity, investigating each new shining marvel she encountered. This made our progress slow, but somehow, watching her, nothing but the thrill of discovery seemed to matter, and my fear of the pursuer was remote once more. Watching her wander and wonder was, I felt in that moment, a destination. We're getting closer to something, she said, standing suddenly and looking back at me. I looked past her down the path, peering into the dim light. The path came to an abrupt end, the trees closing in again. But yes, there it was, a wave in the air. As I looked more closely, I recognized the undulation of another meeting of worlds. I caught up to my companion and offered her my paw. She took it, and together we walked toward the curtains of air, feeling the electric crackle prickling our skin as we approached it. As we reached the boundary, she gently, cautiously extended her hands, her fingertips hesitantly exploring a thing which was not there, wanting to know what an ethereal seam in space and time felt like. I watched her explore it, a smile crossing my face as I recalled my own sense of awe at my first encounters with these phenomena. We both looked back then, our gaze sweeping over the magical and mysterious place we were leaving. It was a place as full of unsettling darkness as it was of sparkling potential, and its elusive lights and shadows seemed to dance before us in silent farewell. Thank you, Sharky, for coming. I'm glad you were able to make it. And I hope to catch you in one of your streams soon. Finally, sighing, we turned back to meet our future. What was on the other side of this curtain? How could I restore this girl's identity and find where she belonged? At this thought, I felt that warning shiver spread through my skin, lifting my fur, filling me with the dread of the unknown, and I found I was holding my breath. The moon hung placidly above the portal, and once again I fixed my gaze and my silent questions upon it as we stepped forward into that unknown. That was Chapter 2, The Misty Woods. Another short break for water, and I'll start Chapter 3. Chapter 3, The Craftsman's Riddle. Upon stepping through, my eyes beat a hasty retreat behind their lids, under assault by glaringly bright bluish-white light, like the winter sun on snow. But I did not need my cowardly eyes, for the air I inhaled, an assault of its own sort upon my braver snout, told me immediately that we were indoors, in a place like those built by humans. The reverberations of sound from our first footfalls in this new place whispered the shape of a long passageway. I willed my eyes open a slit, forcing them to accept their fate, and while I waited, I sniffed again. Yes, it was like a human place, pervasively acrid, stale, oily, but the only human I smelled was my young companion. It smelled not like humans, but rather like human things. There was the low, buzzing hum of distant machines, the universal pulse of a human place which does not beat like a heart, but only grinds constantly. The unwelcome taste of metal spread across my tongue. Thank you for the follow, Sire Tyler. I appreciate it. Welcome to the Grizzly Bears. You are follower number 99. Shortly, my eyes regained their sense of duty and withdrew from their refuge, revealing the corridor I expected, which went straight for some distance before reaching a kind of junction ahead. The walls had the color and texture of eggshells, though flat and uniform. The ceiling, like some other human structures I've been in, burned in glowing rectangles of light, which gave no heat, but buzzed slightly with that constant electric hum and subtle smell of ionized air that harkens a coming storm, but without the earthy petrichor that follows it, perhaps more like copper baking in a hot sun. The floor was made of tile, but covered in a kind of thick, glossy, transparent lacquer that did not smell of lacquer sap. I missed the forest already. The girl was touching the walls, trying to comprehend them. I turned around to see what we'd come out of. Sometimes these portals go both ways, and sometimes they do not, and I wanted to know which kind this was. Immediately I saw a bear looking back at me, a child investigating walls of infinite eggshell, a corridor continuing on straight for some distance before reaching a junction of some sort lit from above by a ceiling full of glowing rectangles of heatless blue-white fire. Now, I may be a bear, but do not think me ignorant of these things, nor a fool. I've seen more in my lifetimes in this infinite library I'll hazard than you have or will in yours, though perhaps you'll be exceptional. I don't want to prejudge. We were, I mean to say, at the end of the corridor, and the entire wall at this end was a perfectly flat and clean, I noted, mirror. I understood this in an instant, but it was still shocking to encounter myself there, in that moment, looking back at me. I had not seen myself in a very, very long time, and there I was, in that place that smelled of copper baking under the summer sun. And there she was, this lost, exploring child. I had to help her find her way home. The corridor in the mirror appeared foreboding an uncertain and arbitrary destiny beyond that distant junction. My chest was, again, constricted, tense. I thought of our pursuer. Would it follow us through this portal? Where would we run to escape it in this place? I thought of just staying there, watching the portal, waiting for it to come. At least then, it could not sneak up behind us. I was still staring at my reflection, familiar but foreign, when my stomach grumbled. It took a moment for me to realize how extraordinary this was. I'd not been hungry in the plane, and I'd been in the plane for a long while. Was it possible to miss being hungry? It had, among other things, a certain grounding effect on a being, a connection to present and straightforward things. It grounded me in that moment, reeling me in from distant, contemplative flights. I turned to the girl who was now observing her own distorted reflection in the floor. "This place," I said, "does anything seem familiar? I think humans built it." "Not really," she answered, unperturbed. "It's neat, isn't it?" "Are you hungry at all?" I asked, wishing I'd thought to find something for us to eat back in the forest. Wishing also I had my pot of honey. "Not really," she repeated. "Well, I suppose there's not much for us here," I said, indicating the mirror over my shoulder. "Forward it is." We proceeded down the corridor and arrived soon at the junction, which offered two undifferentiated paths. I sniffed the air, my stomach noting the lack of food smells in either direction. I chose the left path, and the girl followed. We continued exploring for some time, mostly in corridors, occasionally opening into larger rooms. None of the corridors continued for long in any one direction. There were, oddly, no doors. I began to get the sense that this was quite a large structure as we walked in silence. At one point, we reached a dead end, an odd construction choice, I thought, and had to turn around. "You don't talk much, do you?" I said, piercing the silence. "You don't talk much, do you?" responded the girl, a wry smile in her voice. Her teasing reverberated down the corridor and then faded back to silence. "It's sort of a maze, isn't it?" she offered. "That it surely is." "Shouldn't we be, leaving breadcrumbs?" she asked. "If I had breadcrumbs, child, I would eat them, not leave them," I responded, knowing exactly what she meant, but wanting to tease her back. "I mean, we should be methodical somehow, right? To keep track of where we've been." She paused here before continuing. "We could be going in circles and not even know it." Well, she was a bright one for her age, wasn't she? "That's very wise of you. You must have had a good teacher, and good lessons even if you no longer remember them," I replied. "But rest assured we are being methodical, and we are leaving breadcrumbs, and we have indeed gone in several different circles. That's how I'm mapping the place." She slowed down, and I slowed with her, but we continued walking. "What do you mean?" she asked, and I glanced over at her to see her examining me keenly. "Child, we leave parts of ourselves everywhere we go. Hair, fur, fibers from your tunic, the mud on your boots, from the forest we just left, even still the stale dust of the plains. Those are the breadcrumbs, and I am a bear. I smell it all." I paused there for effect and to wonder a little at what we had carried with us between worlds. Did the worlds mind that we mixed them like this? I felt somehow we should have asked their permission. "Thank you, Dalton Langston, for following. Welcome in. Welcome to the Grizzly Bears. I hope you enjoy your stay here. You are follower number 100. And it looks like I have Sire Tyler to thank for that. Thank you for helping me achieve my follower goal. And like all goals in life, it does not last long. Because as soon as we meet one goal, we set another. What shall we set our next goal to? Should it be 150, or should it be 200? Let's be bold. Let's do 200. I won't meet that for a while. Thank you, Chicky, for believing in me. Where was I? Oh, that's neat. And you keep track of all these hallways using your nose. She was, walking with a new energy now, almost skipping. Using my nose, yes, but more importantly, my mind. You may think it unlikely for a bear, but I do have quite the mind, if I may say so. I am building a map in my mind. We are, methodically, as you rightly say, spiraling outward from where we entered, to the extent that the walls of this place allow. And welcome in Christopher over on YouTube. For those who don't know, I am streaming simultaneously to YouTube and Twitch right now, and most of my viewers are on Twitch, but Welcome in, Christopher, over on YouTube. Welcome to the Grizzly Bears. I hope you enjoy your time here. And goodbye, Dalton. Thank you for stopping by and being follower number 100. I hope you can make it back sometime. Well, I'm going to pause here for some water for my throat. Okay, where was I? I realized, as I said this, how entirely engaged my mind was in this task. I felt quite some pride in that moment, and exhilaration, like the skip in the girl's step, lifted my spirit. Those rusty gears of my mind that had started groaning to life in the plane after long disuse were smoothly turning now. I'd shaken off the foggy mist of the forest too, and yes, indeed, I'd shaken off that invisible pursuer. I was focused on my task and hungry, and how wonderful it was to be focused and hungry with mind engaged and snout alert. I'd come out of a long hibernation. I was alive again. I was alive, focused, and hungry, in sterile corridors that smelled of copper parching in the sun and which offered no food. And I was without my honeypot. I've had better experiences coming out of hibernation, I must admit. The girl asked no more questions and made no complaint. She seemed perfectly content. And that seemed unlikely, I realized. It was not what I expected of a child that age. She was still an enigma. But now I had my mind and my snout and my hunger, and I would solve that enigma somehow. Presently, we came to something quite different. After a turn in the corridor we were then following, it opened into a room which, unlike the other rooms, was not empty. I recognized it straight away as the workshop of a craftsman, albeit the workbench here was a sleek, sterile metal, not oak or some such proper material, and the tools were fine and precise. And there was no craftsman tending this shop. There was, however, what looked like an unfinished project, an array of parts of some extraordinary clockwork, only partly assembled, were spread across the table, some scattered and some arranged in tidy bins. Along the far wall of the room were several tall mirrors embedded in the wall. I was drawn to the mechanism on the table. I've always loved clockwork, intricate puzzles, and problem-solving. And it had been so long since I'd had a good puzzle to solve. I didn't need more reason than that to solve it. My hunger could wait. The child, too, was fascinated and began picking up the delicate parts. I almost scolded her to be careful, but I saw that she knew already to be careful, so I just watched her. She even replaced each part in its place after she'd examined it. And I noted her nimble fingers were much better suited to this task than mine. The parts and the tools were not made for bears, even bears with grasping hands like mine. And so, together, with neither of us ever questioning whether this was the thing to do, because how could we not do this, we set about figuring out the mechanism. Methodical, she had said before, and methodical we were. I soon realized how fantastically complex this mechanism was. And I'd be lying if I said I understood it all, or even most of it. But the child turned out to be quite good at this, and if you'll permit me to point this out once more, I do have quite the mind myself for a bear. Even the parts that were mystifying in their function, we still found how they fit together, piece by satisfying piece. We were so thoroughly enjoying ourselves that my hunger receded, and to this day I have no idea how long we were actually at that table. As it came together, we found that it was not just like clockwork, it was, in fact, a clock, at least in part. It had a clock face, hands, and an escapement of extraordinary design, well beyond my comprehension. But it was more than that, also, and the actual function of the device beyond timekeeping was still a mystery to us both. We knew it was done when, upon closing a small door in the casing, it sprang to life, not just ticking, but glowing, with fine lettering appearing across its surface. Not only that, but the glowing energy must have connected with something within the workshop itself, because we heard a mechanism in the floor spring to life, and 5 short pedestals appeared, one in front of each of the mirror doors, each with glowing lettering of its own. We were, both of us, frozen in breathless trepidation for a long moment, as the girl replaced the clock gingerly upon the workbench. And then, suddenly, we were both whooping and hollering, arms raised in victory. The girl was leaping in the air, and I would have joined her, had there been enough air below the ceiling to hold a bear in flight. I contented myself to grab her instead, lifting and spinning her around the room in a joyful ballet. And then, grinning and out of breath, we returned to our project, eager to play with our new toy. "Can you read that?" she asked, indicating the lettering on the clock. "I could indeed. It says, 'Set your clock by the timekeeper of the shore.' It's a riddle, I suspect." "No way," she cried. "We solve the puzzle, and it gives us a riddle in return." We both laughed. Neither of us were upset by this turn of events. Together we walked over to the pedestals by the mirrors, and I read the lettering which was glowing there too. They said, "I am the mother of shadows, but never my children will I see. I cradle the sky in the land's embrace. Though many think me wise, I illuminate not, but only reflect. A mirror to the soul, I reflect what is within. I wander the sky, yet I need no wings." The girl listened attentively as I read these aloud, and then asked, confused, "Is this all one riddle?" "I don't think so, child," I replied. "I think each of these is a separate riddle, and the riddle on the clock is also separate, but then they must somehow connect into a larger riddle." "So we solved a puzzle and got 6 riddles within a riddle," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling gems of burning amazement. I laughed again. "Yes, child, it seems this is our fate. Unfortunately, some of these, I fear, are quite easy. That first one, the mother of shadows who will never see her children, do you see it?" She thought only a moment before she did indeed see it. "It's the sun." "Yes, of course, well done. Now, what cradles the sky in the land's embrace?" I had to think a moment on that one myself, but staring in the mirror was all it took to make me realize. "It's a lake, I suppose, A lake is a mirror of the sky, and the lake is cradled in a depression in the land. Yes, of course, you are a clever bear. What was the next one? Didn't it have something to do with mirrors also? Well, yes, it has to do with reflecting, yes, as does the one after that. Though many think me wise, I illuminate not, but only reflect. Wisdom, illumination, and reflection, those things go together, don't they? I thought a moment more, watching the girl, but she was perplexed. I looked to the mirror, hoping for another revelation. I remembered suddenly staring at the moon, interrogating it, wanting its wisdom and illumination. "It's the moon," I exclaimed. "The moon is a symbol of wisdom. And we talk about moonlight, but the moon makes no light, child. It only reflects the light of the sun." The girl was looking at me skeptically. "But the moon does make light. There's no sun at night." I pondered how to explain this to her. I had seen it illustrated by diagrams in books, but it was a lot to explain in words. "I will explain this to you when we have gotten out of here and gotten some food," I offered. "Okay, a mirror to the soul, I reflect what is within." "Another reflecting one," she said, "but this one is easy. It's eyes." I thought for a moment. "Right you are, wise one, it is eyes." "Okay, last one. I wander the sky, yet I need no wings." This one, child, I don't think you'll get unless you happen to speak Greek. This one is a planet, which comes from the Greek word for wander. "I guess Greek is a language?" she asked. "I have no other ideas, and you seem like a smart bear, so I shall believe you. But that wasn't the last one. There is also the riddle of the clock." "Yes, set your clock by the timekeeper of the shore," I read for her. "Did you have a thought on that?" "Well, the timekeeper of the shore," she offered. "That's the tides, isn't it? So, is that the lake?" "The tides, yes, you are a very wise child. As for the lake, it could be that," I responded, "but water does not control the tide. It is the passage of the moon that sets the rhythm of the tide. The moon is the timekeeper of the shore." I felt, as I said this, that she would be hesitant to accept this answer, but surprising me, she just nodded, accepting this magical, unexplained power of the moon without complaint. "So how do I set our clock by the moon?" she asked. "That is the simplest riddle of all. We need not set the time of the clock. It's a pun. We must literally set our clock next to the moon. We must place it on the moon pedestal." I took a moment then to enjoy the satisfaction of accomplishment. I'd woken from my long slumber. I was myself again, enjoying the focused energy of investigation, of solving a puzzle for no purpose other than that it was a puzzle, which therefore must be solved. Though, somehow, this puzzle felt important. My time since meeting the child had been strange, as if I'd been led here by something. Gazing absent-mindedly at my reflection in the moon mirror, I thought about the moon I'd seen in the plain, and again in the forest. I'd been asking it for answers. Excuse me. Gazing absent-mindedly at my reflection in the moon mirror, I thought about the moon I'd seen in the plain and again in the forest. I'd been asking it for answers, but the moon shines only in reflected light, as the riddle said. When you ask the moon for wisdom, it can only show you what you already know. Something I saw in the periphery of that reflection snapped me out of my reverie, something impossible. In the reflection in that mirror behind me on the workbench was my beloved glazed terracotta honeypot. Instinctively, I sniffed the air, and its sweet fragrance filled my snout. I spun around, and there it was, my honeypot, on the workbench. I walked to it, and tentatively reached out to touch it, expecting perhaps my paw to pass through it as if it were a mirage, but no, it was there. It was solid. "It's my honeypot," I whispered. "How did it get here?" The girl was watching me, her face a passive, inscrutable mask, and at this she shrugged dismissively. "It's been there all the time, hasn't it?" she said, as if this were the most obvious and uninteresting observation. "Has it?" I murmured in a daze. I picked it up, still in disbelief. Then I looked back at the girl. She was looking bored, perhaps a bit impatient, idly turning the delicate clock over in her hands. My mind sharpened. Something was very strange here. Something very strange about that clock, this place, and that child. Should I be afraid? I suppose not. My situation had only improved since she appeared. I had my mind, my snout, my hunger, and now my honeypot. At that, I realized I could finally do something about the hunger, but I also knew that the mechanism that this child was fidgeting with was more important. We'd solved all its riddles. It was time to see what came next, and solve the riddle of this child. Tucking my honeypot back in my satchel, I gave it a loving pat as I picked up the clock and carried it over to the moon pedestal. The clock's base fit neatly into a shallow depression in the pedestal's top, and as I placed it there, I heard a series of clicks and hums. The clock's hands spun round to midnight, and all of the pedestals descended back into the floor, disappearing beneath small, precise trapdoors that slid into place with a quiet click. As soon as they did, I felt a gentle stirring of the air in the room, and an electric crackle in my fur as the air in front of the moon mirror split into waving ribbons. Remarkable. I'd never seen a portal made to appear by command of machinery like this. I wanted to stay and learn the secrets of this clockmaker, but I had a more important mystery to attend to, and more than that, I felt certain my path was forward. The reflection of the girl and myself in the mirror behind those ribbons was subtly distorted in undulating waves, and I had the unusual sense of an impending collision with myself as we took a breath and stepped toward the mirror. That was Chapter 3 of the Bear Guide, titled The Craftsman's Riddle. We are almost done. There's only one more chapter, and it's quite short. So I will just have some water because my throat is almost ready to give out. And we'll see if I can make it through that last chapter. I'm glad I was muted just then because I made an awful racket knocking over all sorts of things. Okay. Chapter 4. Home. Moments before we would have collided with the mirror, our image dissolved quickly into blackness. We were outside again in an open, slightly chilly space. The air smelled like a clear winter night, and the ground was firm and even under us. Our eyes adjusted, revealing a stunning, starlit sky reflected in a large, calm body of water around us. I looked around. There was no sign of the portal, and we appeared to be on some kind of smooth, round stone platform. There was no moon in the sky, nor clouds, nothing to obstruct our view of the expanse of stars and galaxies above us. I felt my satchel to confirm that my honeypot was still safely nestled there. It was an extraordinary scene, and we both stood in silent awe, the details in the sky growing more distinct and more beautiful as our eyes continued to adapt to the starlight. It was like watching the universe grow fractally, becoming more intricate the longer we looked, suggesting we could stay there and look forever, watching infinity bloom, unfurling petal after petal of delicate beauty. Most of those stars I knew harbored worlds of its own, and every one of them a story unfolding in its own time. And I felt then, somehow, that we stood at the heart of this thing I've come to call the infinite library. In fact, that is the moment when I first called it such to myself. I looked down at the child next to me, the universe reflected in her eyes, and remembered my charge. Do you think, I said, hesitating, one of those worlds is your home? The girl was quiet, not looking at me. Don't worry, I said. I'll stay with you until we find your home. Still, she remained quiet, and the silence and vastness of space pressed against my mind. We stood there for a long moment until slowly I turned toward her and she looked at me, waiting. Your home isn't any of those worlds, is it? I said. She was quiet, looking at me. You're not looking for your home. You're not lost at all, are you? As I voiced my realization, the girl met my gaze, her expression calm and enigmatic. The silence stretched, accommodating the truths that had been lingering at the edge of my awareness. No, she finally said, her voice soft but clear in the stillness of the cosmos. I'm not lost. I looked back at the field of stars. In that observatory of the universe, as the girl's words lingered in the air, understanding dawned on me. The realization that I had been fleeing shadows. My own fears and doubts felt both embarrassing and liberating. Thank you, Mickey. Mike, I still don't know how to pronounce your name, but thank you. You are coming in just at the end of the story, but I'll have the VOD available on my YouTube channel if you would like to watch it later. I've been Running from myself, I said the words hardly more than a whisper. All this time I thought I was protecting you, helping you, but it was I who needed to find the way. She nodded silently. I thought back to my feeling of being lost and purposeless just before I met the girl. Since then, I'd felt urgency in almost every moment, urgency to push forward, to solve the mystery of the girl, to help her. But I hadn't felt lost or purposeless. I'd felt inescapable purpose at every turn, and despite having no idea where I was or how to help the girl, I had not once felt lost while I had this purpose. Having a purpose was just what I needed. True, that purpose turned out to be, well, purposeless. It was perhaps a bit of a lie, or perhaps more accurately a misunderstanding. But this is how it always is with purpose, isn't it? I took the honey pot out of my satchel, enjoying the sheen of starlight reflecting from its glaze. It had always been there, just like she said, hadn't it? When I looked up, I saw a brown bear sitting cross-legged under a great oak tree, holding a glazed terracotta pot full of honey, staring back at me. I looked down again. I was holding a glazed terracotta pot full of honey. I was sitting cross-legged under a great oak tree. I was home somehow. I looked up, part of me expecting the child to be watching me, hoping perhaps she would be there so I could thank her. But I knew she wouldn't be, and she wasn't. There was only the familiar scent of the great oak in the woods I called home. Still, I like to think that little child, whatever her form, is still out there, or still in here with me, and that I am not alone as I explore these realities. Maybe she was nothing more than a part of me, but if so, that makes me even less alone, doesn't it? If she was a part of me, then she'll always be with me. She was, anyway, just what I needed, when I needed it. She gave me not a direction exactly, but the drive to find a direction, or make one. She led me back to myself when I was lost. She was my spirit human. I laughed at my joke, then paused, and laughed again. A spirit human indeed, how fitting. In those human traditions, the young do not choose their spirit animal guide. Whether chosen by their tribes or revealed on a vision quest, it is never their choice. How many brave young warriors have prayed for a great and mighty bear, only to receive an otter or a hare? What a game the universe plays at, for the great, grizzled, wise old bear to be led by a fragile human child, full of wonder and youthful innocence. That was the end of that little story called The Bear Guide. And none too soon, because my voice is about dead. Hello, Mo. Welcome in. I'm sorry I didn't stop right away to greet you when you came in, but I was in the middle of the last paragraph and I decided just to finish it. Anyway, thank you for the birthday wishes. Welcome to the Grizzly Bears. You are, however, right here at the end of the stream. And as much as I'd like to hang around a while longer, my voice is really just about at its end. So I will say goodbye now. I'm glad that you all came to my little birthday celebration and enjoyed this story. If you would like, there's my YouTube channel, where the VOD of this will be available immediately, and then later I will edit the VOD into a proper audiobook without all the scuff. So, goodbye, Mo. Goodbye, Sire Tylers. Thank you, Sire Tyler, very much for the follows. Goodbye, Chicky. Thank you very much for being Chicky, because I love your streams. Oh, I can probably shout you out now. Please follow the Chick Tries. She is a wonderful ASM artist. I wonder, should we raid somebody? Who do we have streaming right now? Yes, let's raid Aishikori. She is also a wonderful ASM artist. Ah yes, Vixen Blair is also live. That's a tough call. I think I'll raid Aishikori. She, in case anybody is asleep in my chat right now, she'll be a less abrupt transition, I think. Her name is hard to spell. There it is. Okay, thank you all for joining me. And I hope you enjoyed your time here. And I hope you will be back whenever I stream again. I'm not sure what I will read next, but I'm sure it'll be comfy. I have no raid message, Chicky, I'm sorry. I have no emotes because I have not activated affiliate yet. Alrighty. Enjoy your time with Aishikori.